Keone versus Hadi. Pose versus pose. Let's go.
Coach Jason Capson here.
Coach Jason Capson here, and today, Keone, the prodigy, Pearson versus Hadi Choopan. And we're going to do a pose by pose in a minute. But first off, there's been a lot of noise about Keone, especially after this year's Mr. Olympia. A lot of people are encouraging him and hoping that he will go into the open division of the Mr. Olympia. Now, Keone is a two-time 212 Olympia champion. Obviously, you just have one look at this guy and you know that he can certainly stand on the open stage, especially when you consider the fact that both Hadi and Derek come from 212, and both of them have been open class Mr. Olympia champions. So people are asking, can Keone do that? Does he have the chops? Does he have the ability to move up to the open Mr. Olympia and stand a chance against the likes of Samson Dauda, Hadi Choopan, Derek Lunsford? Does he have a chance? And so we're going to have a look. We're going to go pose for pose and have a look and see for ourselves what we think about Keone stepping up into the open division. Now, here's the thing. I'm not going to do a Keone versus Samson because I don't think that's fair. I think a better comparison would be to put Keone up against either Derek or Hadi and see how he would fare in a pose by pose against one of the former 212 champions and against one of the former open class Mr. Olympia. Now, do I think Keone can go up and beat Samson? I don't. I don't think he can beat Samson. But let's have a look and see. Do you think Keone Pearson can move up to the open division and crack the top three? So what I'm going to do today is obviously we're going to have a look at Keone versus Hadi. Hadi finished second at the Mr. Olympia this year, and I think it's a good comparison, and I think we'll get some insights into A, whether Keone should move up at all, or B, do we think that Keone can crack the top three? Leave your comments below as usual. Let me know what you think about Keone moving up to the open class. Now, first up, as always, we start with the front double biceps pose, and you start from the ground up, and I know their calves are cut off here in this picture, but it is what it is. When you look at this pose, and again, we're going to break it down, but just straight away, this pose goes to Keone. This is probably one of the greatest front double biceps poses in the entire bodybuilding world right now. When you look at that insane shoulder to waist ratio on Keone, when you look at his legs, when you look at his lats, when you look at his abs, his shoulders, his arms, everything is there and on point. Now, Hadi has a great front double biceps pose. Hadi's got better peaks in his biceps, but everything else, and Hadi's legs are, you get those cross striations in Hadi's, especially in the lower leg there. You see on his teardrop, some cross striations. There's some good definition. Now, Keone has deeper grooves in his legs. Keone has some amazing, amazing legs. But this pose, head to head, goes to Keone easily, hands down, not even close. Keone wins the front double biceps pose. Next up, the front lat spread. And again, you don't have to even be a top level judge to look at this pose and decide who wins this pose. The front lat spread goes once again to Keone. It is impossible to overlook that shoulder to waist ratio. It's one of the best in bodybuilding right now at any level, any size, any division. He has one of the best front lat spreads in the world. I think the only person who has a better one is Chris Bumstead. But in the open division, this is an insane front lat spread. Keone is literal perfection in this pose, and he does beat Hadi once again in this pose with man, it's not even close as far as I'm concerned. And I think his front double biceps pose and I think his front lat spread would even give Samson Dauda a run for his money. Samson just outsizes him in every way, shape, and form. But that's 2-0. That's 2-0 from the front. Side chest pose. Oh, man, I hate to give 3 in a row to Keone, but it's hard to overlook that amazing hanging hamstring. He's got some great size in his quads, in his legs. His glutes are great. I think he does this pose better than Hadi does the pose. I think he sits down a little bit better. Hadi's a little more straight up. I think Hadi's got great obliques and serratus. I think Hadi has a great rear delt. I think Hadi has great striations in his chest. But again, if you look at Keone and you look at the total package from head to toe, I'm giving the side chest to Keone. And you guys know that I love me some Hadi. You know what I feel about Hadi. I thought Hadi won the Open Mr. Olympia this year. I thought he beat Samson. They gave it to Samson. I'm not hating on Samson. I just think Hadi was in better condition and still brought some size. But man, oh man, I've never done a pose versus pose between Keone and Hadi before. And this is actually insane that Keone's up 3-0 as of right now. Now, let's go to the next pose before I get too excited. But the next pose is the back double biceps pose. Again, you look at the two, you start from the bottom. Keone's hamstrings are absolutely insane. His glutes have striations. His lower lats are just flaring. He's got great shoulders, great arms. It's a great looking back double biceps pose. However, you go over to Hadi. Hadi has some incredible glutes. He's got some good hamstrings, not as good as Keone. His back has a little more definition, but not as much size. He has better peaks than Keone. This one's close. This one's close. Again, I think I just, because of that shoulder to waist ratio in the lower, I think I just have to give this one to Keone. Hard to overlook the hamstrings and hard to overlook that taper. Wow, this is looking bad for Hadi. And just so you know, I didn't really compare these as I was putting this together. I wasn't really comparing them as I was putting them up. I was putting the pictures up. And now this is really the first time I'm taking a deep look at this comparison. And I'm actually as surprised as some of you are probably. Well, some of you are probably just like, dude, we knew what Keone brought to the table. We're the ones that have been saying that Keone should move up to open for years now. And here we are. I don't think you're wrong. I think Keone belongs in the open division just based on these first few poses that we've had a look at. Keone is really on a tear right now. Let's look at the back lat spread. Again, hamstrings go to Keone. I think Hadi has more width, maybe not. No, you know what? I'm going to take that back. I think Hadi has more thickness. I think he has more thickness in his back than Keone. Keone has more width. Keone has a better taper. Keone has better hamstrings, glutes, toss up in the glutes. This could be a tie, but if I had to, I think I would give it again to Keone just because of his hamstrings and that shoulder to waist. That taper is unbelievable. Next up, one of the final poses. We've got two left. There is no one on the planet that has a better oblique serratus. There's no one. There's no one better on the planet that's got a better pose, obliques and thighs, than Hadi. Hadi wins this pose. Keone does a fantastic job with this pose. I think his quads are, that feathering in the quads is unbelievable. He does have incredible obliques and serratus. I think there's something going on with his stomach. A little protruding as compared to Hadi. Hadi's abs are just sick and twisted. I think Hadi finally wins a pose. We're going to give this one to Hadi. He wins the obliques and thigh pose. And then last up, we've got the most muscular pose. Again, I don't think this is Keone's best pose. I do think this is definitely Hadi's best pose. He brings it when it comes to his most muscular pose. He packs a ton of muscle on that frame. Not to say that Keone doesn't have as much muscle. It's just that Hadi has more definition, so you see more muscle. His chest has those striations in it. Those abs are sick. His quads. This pose goes to Hadi. It's very close. But overall, I think if you had to pick a winner between these two based on these poses, I think the winner is Keone. And I think Keone, I don't know if Keone's listening or watching or even cares what I have to say, but I'm telling you, Keone, you need to go into the open division, of the Mr. Olympia. You belong in the open division. You can easily finish in the top 3 based on these poses. You can finish in the top 3 and potentially win the Mr. Olympia next year. If Keone shows up in the condition that he showed up this year at the Mr. Olympia with the size that he has, and obviously he's going to put on even more size, as long as he keeps that shoulder to waist ratio tight, as long as he doesn't overdo it with the size and start to become a little blocky a la Derek. Derek's looking a little blocky to me these days. But I'll tell you, if he goes up to open bodybuilding next year, Keone is going to be a force. When you think, just imagine next year's Open Mr. Olympia championships. You've got Samson, the current Mr. Olympia. You've got Hadi, former Mr. Olympia. You've got Derek, former Mr. Olympia. You've got Martin Fitzwater, who's coming off the best season of his life that's knocking at the door. You've got Keone, who could potentially go in there and upset everyone and become the new open Mr. Olympia. And what about Chris Bumstead? No, we're not even going to talk about that today because I don't think it's going to happen. I do think Chris Bumstead will end up in the open Mr. Olympia at some point. It will not be next year. I think he'll take a year, maybe 2 off to put on some size, and then we'll see him come in and wreck the entire open Mr. Olympia championships. But for this year coming up, and what if Nick Walker? What if he ends up on the Mr. Olympia stage? We'll see. He's not really doing that much as far as I can see to even get back up on that Olympia stage. If he does, let's be real. Again, I've said it in the past, and I'm sorry for all the haters out there, but in this lineup, you have Samson, you have Hadi, you've got Derek, you've got Keone, you've got Martin, you've got potentially Chris Bumstead in a couple of years. Where does Derek fit? Derek's getting pushed out of the top 5. It's not Derek. Sorry about that. I get so excited with all this stuff. But Nick Walker gets pushed out of the top 5 at the Mr. Olympia. He may, at some point, he might be 7th or 8th at this point based on what's coming up, based on the new crop that is coming up. Nick Walker could be out of the top 7. He definitely won't be top 3. If anyone out there thinks that Nick Walker at his absolute very best can beat Hadi, can beat Derek, can beat Samson, can beat Martin, can beat Keone, I don't know. Tell me what you think. Leave your comments down below. Coach Jason Capson, signing out.